We are the Essex Birdwatching Society, and this is our first virtual talk. Right from the off, just to remind you, a pair of headphones are recommended for the talk that David's going to bring to us tonight. Tonight I have with me Steve Grimwade from Swallow Birding and also the Vice President of the Essex Bird Watching Society. How are you doing, Steve?
Good, thank you, Steve. Evening.
Matt, you might want to unmute. But Matt Turner is also up in Colchester, where Steve's also from. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And we also have David Darrell-Lambert, who is our speaker tonight, who's also kind of based in Essex, aren't you, David? But whereabouts are you tonight?
I'm around a friend's house. I can't remember where he lives, though. It's around the back Apple somewhere off Chelmsford.
Good. So we're the Essex Birdwatching Society based in the UK. We're just east of London, the county on the outskirts on the eastern side of London. So in the southwest bottom right corner, just above the Thames. And we've been around for just over 70 years, bird recording society. But we also have talks. Unfortunately, as many of you, with the COVID situation, it's changed a lot this year and it's cancelled all of our talks. So we've decided to do a virtual talk tonight. So we hope that it's going to work and you're going to enjoy it. We'd appreciate your feedback. And so please do so. And Steve and Matt are going to kind of tell you how you can get in touch with us tonight.
Right, so we are hoping everyone will contribute this evening for questions. So if you want to ask David any questions live during the talk, you can contact us on Twitter at Essex Bird News or message us on Facebook, and it's at EBwS Info.
Alternatively, if it's easier, you can text us on 07930 530044. That's 07930 530044. And you can also email on ebwstalks@gmail.com. That's ebwstalks@gmail.com. The first people to text or email their name this evening, just to make sure the system's working, will get a free badge. So away you go.
There you go.
Excellent.
Essex Wildlife Trust badges. Absolutely brilliant. Got mine on tonight. So,
or even Essex Birdwatching Society badges.
What did I say?
Essex Wildlife Trust.
Another one for the outtakes. Cut that. Can we start again? Good. No, great. It's always good to get off on a good note, isn't it? Good. So now I've lost my train of thought as well. I'm hoping you've all got your headphones ready for the talk. If you're just joining us, another kind of reminder for that. But I was going to say, let's also ask David to afterwards have a think of what he thinks the... I thought that might happen. My mum and dad are ringing me and asking me how to get on YouTube. So sorry, guys, I'm on YouTube. That was not a setup. That was actually genuine. I think we're going to need another outtakes. Sorry for that. Okay. Anyway, what I was going to say was, David, I wanted to pick some of the most interesting questions tonight as well, and we'll give badges out to people to do that. I also want to know where people are from. So in your messages and comments, let us know where you're coming from. Or where you're living at the moment, where you're actually kind of watching from, because we're aware this kind of far and wide. So it'd be great to know, kind of where you're watching from. And remember, we're actually recording tonight on the 20th of November. So for the questions and answers and, whatever we do tonight for feedback, then remember, we can only really reply for tonight, and we'll be watching the feeds for a day or two ahead for anything we can help you with. But yeah, well, let's get started. David, I met David, and he probably won't remember this, at Gunners Park, David. And I was new to birding. I was a birder as a kid, but I just got, and I heard there was an olive-backed pipit at Gunners Park. And I'd been there all afternoon with a small handful of guys walking around kind of, you know, there was a bush and a tree. And the word was it was near that bush and tree. And we'd kind of kept our distance and was watching. And then, I don't know, about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, this guy turned up with another one of his mates. And he said, anybody seen it? I said, no, we haven't seen it. We've been here for a few hours. So let's go find it then. And in he waded. And just kind of, you know, oh, it's there. And within about 4 meters, he was stood. The bird was right there. And I thought, mate, this is a mega birder. Do you remember that olive-back picket, David?
I do. Yeah. I've been working in Lincolnshire, so I drove all the way down, and I thought I'll go and have a look for this. And then I bumped into a friend in the car park and wandered up, and it was like, I don't know, I just wandered up, and there it was. It was like, you know. Just let it go sometimes, you know.
So right from the off, I was so impressed with David. So I'm so pleased he's giving us a talk tonight. And
did I behave myself as well, though? That's the main question.
You can be yourself, mate, with us. But yeah, so he's been on the TV. He covers kind of TV and runs Bird Brain UK. He travels far and wide, even internationally, surveying birds and gives talks round and about. He's on the radio. I heard an interview with him that was great on bird sounds a little while ago on London radio. And he's also got a book out. If I can share my screen, let me show you that. Have you got it there? There we go. That's good enough. London, Bird Watching London. All the best places to see birds in the capital. Really practical book. I've got a copy myself, which he signed. And actually, there's 10 locations in here that are in Essex, in the historical boundaries in Essex. So it's relevant. And how can we get hold of the book, David?
You can get it from most bookshops. Places like Waterstones do it. The Natural History Bookshop as well does it. So most places stock it. Hunt around, you can find it. And if I ever am able to lead a walk again, which hopefully will be soon after COVID demises, you can normally buy them off me directly at any of my events that I'm at lectures or guided walks. There'll always be a stockpile with me, attached to me.
That's great. And I actually bought a book. I was in a talk in January that David conducted. David, this year, I want to thank you. You have transformed my wife and my gull recognition. He did a workshop on gulls, and I'd heard people talking about white leading edge and things like that. And lo and behold, he put some pictures up, explained what it was. And suddenly now black-headed gulls are black-headed gulls, common gulls are common gulls, lesser blacks are lesser blacks, great blacks are, their blackbacks are great black. Brilliant, mate. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to him and let him work his magic on us tonight on Nocturnal Migration. Over to you, David.
Excellent, thank you. What a great introduction, eh? I mean, I don't think you can get better than that. So that's really good. So we will get cracking into the talk, and I will lead straight away and explain about what we're going to discuss. So we're going to look at nocturnal bird migration, and what we often refer to that is NOC-MIG. That's opposed to VisMig, which is diurnal bird migration as well. So we're really focusing on what goes on at night. So with bird migration, most people expect this kind of thing. Sky full of like storks migrating through in some fantastic place. And yeah, it does happen. We see less of that, maybe very obvious visible migration in the UK, but it does also happen as well. So what we do have is stuff like these dark-belly Brent geese, which are common in the Thames Estuary. You can see them off Southend and Leigh-on-Sea. Masses of them. We have internationally, nationally important numbers in Essex. And this picture was taken at Leigh-on-Sea, where they come in sort of like early October, build up to 8,000 in that small area, and then disperse across the rest of the estuary. Now, in the UK, we have something like 50% of the world's population of dark-bellied brent actually wintering here. So we're really significant. We do get migrants. It may be just not flocks of storks drifting over at night. Well, at day, not night. They probably do move at night as well, but that's another thing we'll come into in a little while. So the question is really what goes on at night, and how do we sort of like work this out and what goes on? So as I said, we'll be talking about NOCMIG, Nocturnal Migration, and it's also called in America Nocturnal Flight Calls as well, NFC. So I have a little game, first of all. Unfortunately, because there's no one participating in the room with me, I am alone in here. We'll do a little game to try and work out what is it. Is it a nocturnal migrant, or is it a diurnal migrant, VSMIG? So we're going to have a listen to a couple of sounds, first of all. You won't be able to ask the questions and get it through to me quick enough. So we'll just go through and have a listen. So hopefully you guys heard that. I'm just going to crank up the volume again and replay that. I actually looped the sound, so it's not quite as natural as I wanted it to be, but it was only a short recording, so I looped it to give you more of the experience. So this is, in case you didn't know, and here I'm showing you a sonogram. Now these sonograms are what a graphical representation of the sound. So running from the left to right, we have the time in seconds normally, and on the right hand side going up and down, we have the frequency. So birds all produce sounds at different frequencies. Some are very, very low down, some are much higher, some are in the middle, and some do a combination of stuff. So if you really looked at something like an amazing singer such as a nightingale, they jump between really low notes to high notes in a split second and back down again. They can hold these notes really well. So they're real amazing vocal ability. Now at night, we don't get that sort of thing going on, but we do get birds calling quite a bit. And right down the bottom of the screen, you can see a couple of like pale lumps sticking out in the background noise. Now this was recorded from my garden, and that background noise is basically the M25. So it's nice when there's less traffic around. I do appreciate that for this kind of work. These are in fact common scoters. So here you can see a flock of common scoters going by in the North Sea. That was off Spurn. And then another example here is a common scoter that I photographed in a central London park. So they do turn up in odd places. Now what we get is a migration across the UK, and it's thousands of birds coming out of the North Sea and heading across the country. So that means in the February, March time, loads of these birds are traveling over. Now, what we probably didn't really fully understand was that they do a lot of this at night, and they make this funny, weird sort of like peep, 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 peep call as they go over. So this year, when everyone was suffering with COVID withdrawal symptoms and not being able to get out in the field, lots of people actually going into their gardens and listening to this stuff. It was happening a lot further to the north, across northern UK, but you were still getting it coming across London, and I got it across on the east side of London, out along the Thames estuary, not far from Rainham Marshes. So you can actually hear them traveling over, and it's quite surreal to think that some of these birds are traveling over possibly in mass numbers as well, migrating across all parts of the country as they head off to their breeding places in the spring. And of course, in the autumn, we get the reverse movement of them coming back, heading south as well. With common scoter, they tend to move around sort of like in March, April time, and then we get a small movement again in like July, and this is like the males coming away from the breeding places. In London, they're very typical, turning up on the inland reservoirs in those sort of periods as well. So VSMIG is a way in which we can identify, NOCMIG is a way in which we can identify their movement when we're not picking up, because unless they land nearby, we have no idea really what's going on at night. So did you hear that? There's a very interesting little call going on. It's quite a common species. Let's have another listen. And for tonight, it features on my hoodie. You can see the calls here, very nicely done. This is by Alula Designs, and they produce a lot of different bird-related t-shirts and hoodies. And I said, I need a black NOCMIG one, and this is what I aimed for. So this bird we can hear calling, and you can see here the nice variated lines. You get often 3 lines and they're all like squiggly like that. Very, very distinctive. And what happens is you get used to some of these sonograms and can quite easily pick up some of these birds and work out what they are. This is in fact a blackbird. So blackbirds we'll often see throughout the year in your garden and places like that, but they're also like a bird that will migrate and also be a resident and do short migration and long migrations. It's quite a complex area to understand. So if we look at blackbirds, say breeding somewhere like in Northern Europe, in the winter months, obviously that's going to be covered in complete snow, very cold weather. So what happens is they peg it out of there for a bit of shorts and sandals weather, and they end up somewhere like in the UK, sometimes in their thousands, and some of them will head further south. Now our birds will do a mixture of stuff. Some of them will head much further south and spend it in Southern Europe. Again, they want to bask in the sunshine. Because of course in Northern Europe, it's covered in snow and there's no food and there's no leaf litter for them to go through, no insects for them to feed on. So they come out of Northern Europe, Russia and Eastern Europe as well. So we can get them. And on some nights I get quite a lot of them migrating over my garden. So that sound, and we play it again. Let's go back, have another little listen. So that's a very coastal bird, okay? And I was really pleased to get this. I had to listen to it a couple of times because I really wasn't expecting to get it on migration. And these are these funny little squiggly sound lines at the very bottom. Now, sometimes you get very clear sonograms of species, and it enables really quick sort of like identification. But often these ones that are lower down are not always that clear and kind of like a bit of a head scratcher at first. These are turnstones. So I picked them up one August over my garden, and I was like very, very happy to get them because obviously they're real coastal birds. You get them on the rocky coast, and we get them in places like Southend in very good numbers as well. So you don't always expect them to be traveling inland, but they obviously do because they're going to come down from places like Greenland and across the Arctic Circle from Russia, and may cut across the country to go and winter somewhere, just like any other bird may do as well. So all these shorebirds, waders are actually migrating over your gardens at night, and it's really interesting to listen out for them. So I find sort of like March, April time, very good for a bit of wader migration. And then often in like July, it starts picking up with a lot of the fouled breeders coming through again. So July all the way through to sort of like September can be really good for waders going over your garden. So normally like you would very rarely get any waders in your garden at all. Maybe a cold weather movement of lapwings or something like that. And NocMig enables you to actually record lots of these species that are going over without us seeing them at all. Or until we get really good eyesight, eat a lot of carrots, that sort of thing. So this sound here is a really typical NocMig species. And one of the issues you have is that on some of these birds we've been listening to, they're actually making the sounds they make during the day as well. Common scoter will make that sound. I've heard it once now. And also, obviously, the blackbirds will make that sound as well. And so do your turnstones. But sometimes you get some species that produce only a nocturnal sound at night. So this becomes very hard to identify. Now, occasionally, you're lucky and they will actually emit this sound during the day. But it does take a bit of detective work to understand exactly what this is. So we'll do another quick listen. Oops. Very distinctive kind of pip, 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 pip. So it changes in speed and also tone slightly as well. Just this long sort of like blast at the end. This is what we see. And again, you can see how distinctive this sonogram is with a couple of pip, 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 and then a pip, 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 as it almost fires it out like a machine gun. So I would expect very few people out there to know what it was. I never knew what it was when I first started doing this, and it was very exciting to pick up all these really strange noises and think, what the blazes is that going on out there? This is in fact a little grebe. So little grebes we'll probably see fairly regular during the winter months. You might notice a little bit of migration, but there's actually hundreds coming into the UK, and they'll come across from the continent, spend it, maybe move further down from somewhere like Scotland to winter somewhere in the south or even down into Europe. That means they're coming across Essex in all sorts of directions. And these move through sort of like typically in February, March time, and then again, much later in the autumn. They seem to be in the spring, they seem to be very, very vocal, and I get bigger numbers in the spring than I do the autumn. So there's still lots of for us to learn and really understand why some months and some birds are more spring orientated for calling and others are more autumn based as well. So this is a very distinctive sound very typical species that you get on Knock-Mig. And again, it's like a very big passage in the spring, and then later on in the autumn, from August onwards, you can start getting them all the way through into October. And it's a fairly common bird as well, but the sound is very, very distinctive as well. And it's one of those species that as soon as it starts getting dark in your garden, they potentially are migrating over. March is a very good month for them. And this spring, I've done some live stuff and actually heard them coming over at night, which I really enjoyed. It was cold though, I do have to say, but it is worth sometimes doing these little crazy outings. And as well, the thing is, in the winter time, like the end of the spring, the night time is quite long, and so you can go out like at 7 o'clock and actually hear some of the stuff without having to get up and stay out till quite late, which is what happens more in the springtime. I tend not to do that at all, really. So you can hear it also fading away. And often with Knock-Mig, you will find you hear something very quiet to begin with, then it gets really loud, and then it disappears again. So you actually get the whole experience of them migrating. Some species are called in a lot, so it's very obvious. Sometimes it's just like a very faint sound, and then it gets louder, louder, and then quieter and quieter as it disappears off. And here we have the sound again, really very distinctive sonogram, very tall spikes off from this call, as it's a very sort of like basal emittance. And he's a coot. So again, coots swell in numbers in the UK in the autumn, and again, they will depart in the spring. So I had a job working in Thorpe Park, County Wildfire, and that falls under SSSSI area and also part of the Ramsar site for Southwest London water bodies. So they had masses of birds across the whole area. Now, coots there in the summertime, you would only have like maybe 30, 40, maybe up to 60. And then in the winter, you could get up to 600. So you can see the numbers have swelled tenfold. And that's probably happening in all sorts of places. Maybe it's not as obvious, but maybe in your local park, coots are actually coming in from the continent to actually spend the winter. Now, I have a friend of mine, Bill Haynes, and he's actually been Darwin ringing coots and getting a nice collection of data from some of the royal parks. Now, they are starting to move a bit more, so it'll be really interesting long-term how far they go. Now, the trouble with ringing of birds is that you need the bird to land and be somewhere where someone can actually read the ring, pay attention and send it off, rather than just go, that's a funny bit of bling on its leg. So with nocturnal migration, you can actually pick up lots of these things and get really detailed patterns about what's going on. So that is a very classic bird call, and most of what we've covered are mostly very clear nocturnal migration species. But we've reached now another one, which is really nocturnal and diurnal migrant as well. So this is one of my favorites, and here we have it, a lovely redwing. You know, and once you hit September, the first ones start arriving in the UK, and then by October, we have these big flurries of them. And what we're really waiting for, and I'm sure most people have experienced this, is a nice still night with no cloud cover, maybe even a full moon. And from early on, redwings are streaming through, calling, doing this seep, seep call as they migrate through. Now, I've experienced really massive numbers of them going over my garden, and it can be a real phenomenal thing. Now, you get the same thing happens in the spring. So in March time, their numbers boom as they shoot through. Now, for me, I've discovered that actually in September, you start getting the first redwings coming through. So sort of like about the 20th of September, way before I normally see them during the day, migrating through, the first ones I'm starting to record over my garden. And that also means that in the spring, I'll record them right up until sort of like mid, even late September, as they start, as the last stragglers sort of head back north. So this really gives you a massive idea about what's going on. So I've seen some places where you can get really large numbers of redwings moving through during the day, and you get these big flocks streaming through. So when you start thinking about numbers of these birds migrating, you're trying to think, well, how many calls represents how many birds? Is it one bird per call? Is it one bird and a large flock maybe, and just only a few calls? So I tried to do experiments with this with redwings moving during the day, and I was getting stuff like a single redwing would fly over and then call 6 times. And I'm like, well, you can hear that coming, then it gets closer, then it disappears again. That may be easier to work out and not me. But then I've had big flocks go over where you only get 2 or 3 calls, and you're like, well, you know, how are you going to work that out during the night as to how much is migrating? And that's a question we're going to discuss, well, I'll be discussing with you later on. So again, I was at another site in London, and there was very little going on. And then at 9 o'clock in the morning, I had a big movement of redwings, and they flew through a very narrow area. I had this big field of view, about 100 meters wide, and I counted something like 2,500 redwings in 2 hours, which was massive. But it was these big flocks of up to like 300 or 400 at a time. Barely any of them calling, just get 1 or 2 calls from them. So it was very interesting. That makes you really consider how many calls are being represented at night. So yeah, it is going to be very dark, and how are we going to monitor them? And this is a bit of a cheeky picture, because you've got my now current NocMig setup with a little badger in the background as well to keep you interested. So what I use is a big parabolic dish, and then I have it tripod mounted, and have a bit of Tupperware that has my digital recorder in there and the extension lead. So that means when it rains, nothing's getting wet. Now, obviously, I've got a ginormous, great big soup bowl with a mic in it, which would obviously fill up nicely and become a new bird bath in the morning for the birds. So what I've done is actually drill a couple of holes in the bottom of the dish, so then the water just drains out. So that means I can leave it out even when it's raining quite a bit without having to dry the mic out for a few days, which I have to say I actually have done. So what stuff do you need? Well, you're going to need a digital recorder. And you can buy just a tiny little one about the size of your phone if you want, and you can just leave that out in the garden to record. Now, the thing is, to protect it from the elements and also wind distortion, you can do is just put it in a simple like piece of Tupperware with a bit of plastic across the top secured, and then that will allow no rain to penetrate, and your digital recorder will be safe for the night. Now, these all run off batteries, and the trouble is that on cold nights, as you're, I'm sure, mostly aware, your digital batteries lifespan becomes much more reduced. So I always recommend, if you can, plug it into the mains or have a battery pack to charge it all off, because it just makes life a lot easier. The first time I attempted this, I left it out with just standard rechargeable batteries, and I just recorded 3 hours because it died soon after that, because it was quite a cold October night. So then what else do we need? It's useful to have an external mic. One is, if you're doing it from your house, you can just have the mic sticking outside of the window and have your digital recorder on the inside, but also it just amplifies the sound and gives you a much better recording to play with. Obviously, when you get to towards the top end of the spectrum, it's quite a lot of money. And my parabolic dish will amplify the sound down, and therefore hopefully get as really good recording as possible. Now, in some ways, it doesn't matter, because if birds are migrating low down, your mic will pick it up no matter what. It's really the higher distant or very quiet stuff where a more powerful mic comes into its own play, really. And then we need some software as well. So what will happen is you would gather these sound files, and then you need to stick that in your computer and analyze them. So there's some software available. Raven Light is produced by the Cornell University, and the light version is free to download. And there's also Audition and Audacity as well. Audacity is a free software that you can get. Audition is actually Adobe version, which is what I use, just because I got used to using it. I'm very, I'm just more relaxed with that. Now, of course, you also need time. You need time because you're going to have maybe up to 12 hours, maybe 14 hours of sound files to go through. And obviously you can't sit around after recording a night for 14 hours a day listening to the whole thing. That's beyond most people's capabilities, and mine, to be honest, as well. So this is a typical sound file that I've picked up, and you can see I've got 3 hours and about 50 minutes to go through, and there's a lot of stuff going there. So it's all zoomed out at the moment. You've got all the sound distortion running across the bottom, and I also look at both channels because I'm recording in stereo. So what I then do is I go through and I mark up loads of different, all the individual sounds, and some of them I'll know what they are, some of them I don't know what they are. And what I'm doing is narrowing the view down and then just playing through, and I play and then scan through at the same time to look for any sort of like fluctuations in the sonogram, maybe a distinctive call, maybe something else that I will have a listen to and maybe put a mark against, and then to listen later on and work out what it is. So this is one where there's a lot of action going on. Excuse me. And this here you can see much further down, you've got the time along the bottom, and this is like a 1 hour, 33 minutes into it. And you can see the frequency, well, you can't see the frequencies on the right hand side. And these are a species that we get quite a lot. These are redwings, so we'll have a quick listen, hopefully. Okay, so you could hear 3 very loud recordings. And on here, you can get this real nice graphic display of these calls. And you can see on the top one, the first call coming up is really loud on the left-hand side, and on the bottom, on the right, it's much weaker. So as you can imagine, as a bird flies over the mic, it may be at more one side than the other. So one side of the mic will pick it up more than the other. That's why it's really important to have, if you do have stereo, to listen to both channels. Now on the next 2, you can see very faint sounds coming across the top. So these are probably 2 distant birds calling. And then again, on the next one to the right, slightly more louder as well. So you can see birds at different ranges producing sounds at different volumes as well, which is fascinating. And you can see it was a big one because I'm on 719 mark by 1 hour into it. So that may have been one of these ones that breached well over 1,000 sounds in a 3-hour period, which is, that's when you get I get very excited. And it does take a long while to go through. And then what I do is I then feed it into a spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet takes, I can export out the individual markers and the actual time, and then my spreadsheet then calculates exactly what time it was. I then label up whether or not it's a man-made sound, if it's unknown, and if it's good, I'll then give it a ranking as it's poor, good, or very good. This enables me to go back and check stuff out, and also gives me a grading, because then I'll copy out all the ones that are good or very good on unusual sounds, so then I can store them as a reference library later on. So then I've marked down how many individuals I think it is. Normally I say individuals stroke groups, because you may get, for example, if you look on one of them at 47 minutes and 12 seconds, I've actually recorded widgeon. Now I put down widgeon as good, I put call, and I put 1, but I get 10 calls. Now it's hard to know whether or not that 10 call represents a very large flock or not. Often with ducks and widgeon especially, they're whistling all the time, and you can hear sounds overlapping. So you get one really loud, one distant, one loud, and it changes all like that. So it gives you a real feel that there could be quite large flocks moving out. And I always find in March that they start moving out of the Thames estuary, and that's when I start picking them up as they cut across the land. And there's also a shoveler there recorded as well, and I put 2 individuals, because I think in those days, because this is quite an old one, that I used to just say 1 or 2, where now I just list it as 1, and I'll say number of individual stroke groups, because we really can't tell. But you can see that gives me a whole load of data to then look at and start manipulating, and also to log for the whole day to enter in for bird records as well. Whether or not you're using the Essex Birdwatching Society's website to log the data, or the BTO's Bird Track, or even eBird as well. There's various different resources out there as well to get the information out. That then means I can look at stuff on a daily basis, and here you can see me looking at the March through to April, May, June, and even August. And this is before I started recording all year long. So in the old days, I'll do like March through to about May, June, and then stop and not do anything until maybe August. Now I record continuously from probably about mid-February all the way through to mid-November. So I get a nice complete set, because the trouble is, if you only pick the times when you notice big migration, what are we missing? We're not trying to explore the world. We're just being very narrow-minded as to what is going on. So really, I now collect a massive long data set to really have a good idea of what's going on out there. So I know when the peaks are, when there isn't, and what happens out there. So you can see at the beginning, in the March time, there's quite a lot of movement of birds, and this is going to be thrushes and also ducks moving out. Climbs down a bit more into April, into May, and then you can see it picks up in August. And what I discovered in August was that I first started hearing like some large gulls flying over at night, and I thought, oh, these must be the local ones breeding. But then it kind of continued on and on and on. And there was lots of records, and these are large gulls moving into like the Thames estuary, which is right next door to me, in very large quantities. You can really see how that, like, by the time you get to the first week of August, it really ramps up, and we got a peak here of like nearly 400 calls in the 19th of August, which is real phenomenal number. And then it dies down, and then like in September, thrush movements start picking up into October, and that can roll into November as well. Now here's an analysis that I've done on a daily basis, and I'm using, what am I using? Pivot tables on Excel to then manipulate the data. And what I've done is, you'll see that on some of these rows, there's birds in here like a blackbird, but there's no indication. That's where I've got a blackbird singing after sunrise, and it may be a nice bit of song, so I've made a note of it, but I'm not logging down the individuals, because I only want this spreadsheet to give me totals per night. So you can see how it varies each night. And like one night here, I've had oyster catcher and 10 redwing calls. There's also song thrush and the shoveler have gone through as well. So you can see a nice mix of different species moving through. And it's very interesting as you go through each month what goes on. And then you can look at individual species. So here I was looking at moorhens, and you can see moorhens moving through March, April, and then some funny things start happening in May, where you get these late movements of moorhens and also water rails into June moving. Now, it's hard to know whether or not these are late birds migrating out of the UK or it's breeding birds near me flying around from place to place. But it's just very interesting to start noticing this and trying to work out what is actually going on. Because one night I got 27 calls from a single individual, what I suspect was moorhen. You know, are these moving in big numbers? Are there groups of them? I don't really know as yet. Until I can get a radar station built on my house, which would be nice, a bit costly, then I have no idea about mass. Then we have the issue of, okay, so I've got a flock of birds flying over and I get one moorhen call. Are they all moorhen? Is it a mixed group? I don't know. That's the next conundrum and the next issue to try to deal with. So what can we get? So in 2016, I recorded 46 species across that year. I didn't really do a full-blown hunt for it, but I did get 14 species of wader, including this beautiful golden plover as well. So you can see a very distinctive sonogram, and I was really pleased to get some of these birds that I've been trying to get during the day and hear them actually migrating overnight. Also, I had 6 species of duck, and we've got some nice classic widgeon here. So you can hear the sounds overlapping as well. That gives me an idea that there's a fairly good flock moving through, or at least several different individuals all calling at the same time, which is great. And then we get thrushes as well. I get up to 5 species of thrush, and this is a group of fieldfare. And very noisy that night. There must have been some traffic nearby, but you can hear the fieldfare calling. So typically we associate it all with stuff like redwings, but other winter thrushes and other thrush species such as ringers will also migrate over, and we can pick them up too as well. And then that year I recorded 3 species of bunting, including this beautiful thing, which is a Lapland bunting. So that was really unexpected for me. It's the end of October, and I can hear this rippling call and then the choo-choo kind of call as well, which was really fantastic. And when I sent it off to get verified by some people from the Sound Approach team, they said that they reckon there was at least 2 individuals because the calls really overlap right on top of each other. So that was beyond my wildest dreams, really, to get juicy stuff like that. So how many? In 2017, I recorded 4,500 calls over 36 nights. So that was a fairly good effort done there. And here you can see peak calls in mid-October, and that's the redwings going bananas. So most of them calls that year just came from one night in October. You can see some smaller peaks along the bottom. Then 2018, I didn't get that many recordings because I did manage more nights, but I missed a lot of the autumn. I was away working in the Middle East for a couple of 2 weeks sprints out in Saudi Arabia. So I missed quite a lot of really good nights. And it's before I decided, which I did this year, to pay my daughters to do some not mig for me. So they were putting out the gear, trying to record, which had some failures and some successes, but that's another story. And my peak call was only 200 birds, well, 300 birds on the 16th of October. And you can see some other big counts here going off as well in the spring, but October was a real big month for stuff. These, again, are mostly thrushes and ducks moving in the spring. For some reason, ducks seem to be much more vocal my way in the spring than in the autumn. Not really sure why, but it's, maybe it's more condensed migration. But 2019 was really, really good for me with 11,000 calls over 64 nights. You can see how a bit more consistency, you really could see some great peaks. And what we have with all these graphs is the upper number is the top number of calls, and the bottom number is number of individuals I suspect. And it's only like guesswork really to get us in that area. But you can see March, April time, some nice little peaks of ducks and stuff. And then we get to August, and all of a sudden it goes bananas. And this is all the Gull passage that I was talking about. And then in October, we start getting all the thrushes moving through. And the highest that night, one of those nights, was just under 2,000 at the end of October. So I still missed any really massive peaks. I think I was away twice in Scotland and in Yorkshire during good migration time. So I probably missed some of the very good nights during that period. But as you can see, really, really interesting set of data coming through already on this. So why is it so important? Well, let's have a look at song thrushes. So song thrushes are birds you might hear whizzing around early in the morning or see in your garden on a regular basis if you're lucky enough. And what are those counts like? Oh, here we go. Here's some nice sounds of song thrushes like that. Sip, 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 cool. And we'll have a quick look at that again. You can see the funny little tick that you get halfway through the sonogram. So I started recording some quite good numbers of song thrushes moving over my garden. So I nearly had 1,000 back in 2017, which I thought was absolutely crazy. I mean, how many birds does that represent? Is that exactly 1,000? Is it a bit less? Is it like 3,000 or 4,000? Because how many song thrushes are calling as they go over? Having seen them during the day over my garden, they don't always call that frequently. So this may be a real tip of the iceberg stuff. Now, in 2018, I only recorded 84 one night. And remember, that was the year in which I didn't do it very thoroughly during the autumn. And then 2019, again, up to like nearly 900 of them in one night. So that's absolutely fantastic stuff. So when I looked this up, I started researching in London and thinking, what was the maximum count? Turns out there was only 200 with 2 counts in the early 60s. One at Beddington Sewage Farm, one at Rye Meads, which is on right on the border of Essex. And that was only 200 birds. So if I'm recording nearly up to 1,000 now, how many were migrating, say, 10 years ago when their numbers were much higher, or 20 years ago, right back into the 60s? That could be absolutely sensational numbers traversing over our countryside at night. So if we look at that, and here we've got a lovely peak. This is the big high peak, and you can see in the spring, very, very low numbers moving through, starts picking up in early October, mid-October, it just goes absolutely bananas, and then trails off into November. So what I've done was then try to do a bit more research. Here we got my 2 big counts again, nearly 1,900. And then I looked up in Hertfordshire. Hertfordshire's record count was only 200. That was at Rye Mead, so borders on the London area as well. And then I looked up some more data. And one of the counts, highest counts I found in Essex was just under 500 in 2015. So again, I'm getting these real massive numbers right on the edge, east side of London. What else is going on across the country? At Spurn, their maximum count was 1,500 back in 2019, in 1998. And again, I'm recording like 2/3 of that over my garden, let alone a real hot spot like that. And then Norfolk, there was a big count of over 3,000 in October 2012. So again, when you consider that I live on the edge of London in Essex, I'm getting these massive numbers of birds going on. What else does it go on across the whole of the country, inland, away from these well-known migration spots? If we were to able to get loads of people sound recording every single night, how many numbers are involved? Is it like a wave that comes all the way down, or are they very much focused into very narrow areas? So many questions to answer on all of this as well. So there are obviously pitfalls and issues with this. First of all, how do we count what we can't see? You know, when we hear the redwings call, how many does one call actually mean? Is it a group? Is it just one individual? Very hard to work this sort of thing out. And then the other issue is that some species are more vocal than others. I don't believe that I'm only getting like maybe up to 100 or so blackbirds over my garden at night. I think there's much more. I just don't think this species is that vocal, and there's probably potentially even thousands more moving through. And what do we do about these ones that don't call? We can't record them at night. There must be another way. We must try to encapsulate this migration as well. And what do we do with wings only? So a lot of the time I only get wings, and some nights it can be bad, like 40 or 50 in one go, and I have no idea what these species are. As well, have a quick listen. So you can really hear clearly that bird coming closer and closer and disappearing. And some nights become completely different sounds. I've heard birds with some sort of undulating flight. We get flap, flap, and then flap, 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 flap. So it really is quite an odd thing that's going on out there. And how do we work this out? Then there's weather issues as well. So this is going to be a bit of rain and it's a bit loud. So mind your lug holes. What do we do with that? There is some software that has been developed that will remove the sound of the rain out from the sonogram. But my reaction to some of this is when you try to take away some of this sound, it often takes away a little bit of the bird sound as well. So the sound then, what's remaining can be quite distorted as well. But there may be better software that we can utilize for that. And like I said, methods for counting. And we'll have a listen to this. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, there. So how do you count loads of calls all at once? On that previous screen, let's jump back. You can see all these redwing calls varying in volume as well. And what does that mean? There's 2 at the end that are overlapping again. How many is involved in that? And then there's the helpline. So there's these mystery sounds that you get that no one seems to know what they are. That funny squeaky thing, I'm pretty certain is actually now a little grebe making one of the less typical sounds. But there are various Facebook groups you can join, and there's even a WhatsApp group for all of Europe. And we've also got some people out in the Far East recording, and we're exchanging information, asking questions, trying to work out what is going on out there. And then they're staying focused. So this is me after doing about 2 hours of doing not MIG, and my brain gets a bit addled. So you do have to try and stay focused. Which is hard. So on a typical section of say 3 hours, I may be able to get that through in 20 minutes or so if there isn't a lot of calls. The more calls there are, way much longer time it takes for us to go through all of that. And I've got a feeling Steve may start waving at me, asking me to stop soon because I'm not quite sure when he wants me to finish. How much more have I got? 5 minutes?
Yeah, go for it. It's fascinating. Keep going.
Right. So what's next? Well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to listen to some of my not MIG that I've recorded in early November for a couple of minutes and see what we can hear, so you get a real life experience of what it's like. So I'm going to try to reshare my screen, and I'm going to open up one of my sound files and have a look at that. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. Hopefully not, as I fumble around on my computer. Let's try this one here. So I'm going to open up that sound file and then switch what I'm sharing with. Okay, I'll stop sharing for 1 second and now jump onto my Adobe Audition. And here we go. Let's see how it goes. You can see it's loading up the sound file now, and you've got all this. Oh, it looks like quite a noisy night, which may just be rain or something like that. So hopefully it's not complete rain. I will then focus in on the sonogram, as you can see here like this, trying to look in a bit more detail. And what I'm trying to look for is some sharp areas of some sharp stuff to focus on. Now, this beginning bit is where I've turned on my digital recorder, so there'll be a bit of sound in the background. What I do is I run it, you can hear it's windy, and then scan at the same time. So all these funny little bits down here, and I'll stop for a sec so you can actually hear me, these are probably going to be some background noise disruption. Yeah, you can hear something. I've got some industry near me, so I have to be careful. And I'll just scan through looking for stuff that might be relevant. This is something oscillating in the background. I don't think it's human. I think it's human or man-made. Oh, that's fireworks. So there you go. It was obviously near bonfire night. So someone was sending off fireworks, which is that may account for the large number of things going off in the background. Yes, this doesn't look very good. Human sounds, a bit of wind. Dun, 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 dun. What I may do is scan right away to the end. Let's move this along. Here we go. Where it starts quietening down, and therefore we're more likely to find something. So notice as well that I've reduced the range of the sonogram because I like a nice even shape. If you make it too big, the sounds gets distorted. So let's see if there's anything to look at. And it doesn't look like there's much at all. Here's a little thing. No, that's just a leaf or something like that banging. You get used to exactly the sounds and what you're looking for as well. And as you can see, it's not always sunshine and roses, and you don't always find much, and you can be scanning through for quite a long time. But I'm really hoping there'll be a nice redwing going over, but I can't seem to find any. Oh, what's this? This may be fox sounds. Let's have a listen. No, that's someone chatting in the background. which you sometimes pick up as well. So you do pick up odd sounds. We'll skim through that because I don't want to listen to their conversation. And I normally get a bit annoyed that I can't hear a bird, to be honest. I'm like, I don't want to hear about you having an argument with your neighbor in the background. Let's have a look. What else is there? This is a bit more noisy. No, can't tell what that is. I'd need my headphones on. And the trouble is, if I plug my headphones on, you guys won't be able to hear anything at all. So let's have a look. It doesn't look like there's anything, which is a real shame. Oh, no, look. Here we go, look. I'm sure. Did you hear that? Little seed go through. This is a redwing calling. You can see that nice downward curve coming from that recording on the redwing. So let's do marker on that. We'll do some live checking. So obviously at that point, I could hear a redwing. Let's see if there's anything else. No, it may be a while before. Bit more firework action. There you go. Missed all that. And here might be birds flying. Yeah, I can hear the wing beats. You can see those funny little lines sticking up there, going along like that. And they're the wing beats of probably a species of duck going over the garden at that time. Bit more firework action there. And then I think we'll do just a couple more minutes and then call it a nut. This might be song thrush. No, it's not song thrush. It looked like a little bit of a tick. They do like a V tick sound. It's a good job I've done my fingers around the right way there. Otherwise it would have been embarrassing. Is there anything else? No, I think this is more fireworks. I must remember not to do early November because that's not a good time, is it? No, typically with the firework period. Oh, here's, look, this is definitely a bird flying over. You can see the peak as it comes through. So you can really hear them strong wing beats going through. And some birds are very, very distinct. So I think we'll stop there for the moment and switch back to find out how many questions we've got and where from. For some reason, I can't see how not to share the screen, which is not very good. Where's unshare screen? Down the... No, can't find it. Let's close this down.
I think we're okay. Yeah. We've got the screen now. Yeah, yeah, we're back. We're back in business. I can just where should we go? Gallery. You can maybe unshare now if you want.
Yeah.
There we go.
Ah, perfect.
How's that? That was
excellent.
Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Should we get rid of these now? Just get rid of those and I'll be able to hear. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Really good.
And massive insight, and amazing how technology can be used, even the visual, the sonograms, to pick out those bird calls. I found that absolutely amazing, and I'm sure those that are watching did. So now's the time to send your questions in. Matt, are you ready to kind of put up the screen, or do you want me to do that for questions? I've got it here.
Yeah, I can't share a screen, unfortunately.
Okay.
But yeah, if you put that screen up, I think Steve had it, didn't he? We do have some questions, though.
Great stuff. Okay, well, we'll come to questions shortly. That's not the... Is it? Is it? Yeah. See if I can find that screen with the D. Is it screen 2? How's that? No.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh.
Was that it?
That was it.
Okay, I'll go back to it then.
Joys of technology.
It just, yeah, it kind of is coming up on the monitor on the side for me, so it's kind of throwing me a bit. Anyway, yeah, so go ahead, Matt, kind of tell us how to get the questions in and what people need to do regarding names and stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, basically any questions that anyone's got, we have had a few already, but you can see on the screen, you can text us on 07930 53 0044, or you can email at ebwstalks@gmail.com.
Yep. Or you can visit us on our Twitter page at Essex Bird News, or our Facebook page at EBwS Info. Be lovely to hear from you all.
Great stuff. Don't forget to put your name on the questions, particularly if it doesn't automatically come up on Facebook and that kind of thing, so we can identify you and reference you in the question. And the other thing, I don't know whether you found our website website yet, which is there. EBwS.uk is our website, and we would love for you to take a look at that. And also consider, if you're not already, we have over 500 members, but plenty of room for more. So if you're not a member and you actually live in Essex or bird in Essex, then it'd be great to have you on board. It costs £16 for an adult per year. If you start now, then you get the rest of this year free and the whole of next year. We issue a bird report like that. The Essex Bird Report is out annually, and there's a new one coming out very soon. And twice a year, we also have a journal called Essex Birding, and there's one of those due. Sorry, the good. Yeah, which is more kind of accounts of, you know, kind of trip people have made and our own sites. We've got a feature going into the next one on the Big County Bird Watch, which was an event that we held at the beginning of October. So it would be great to have you on board as a member. And as we said at the beginning, if you were late arriving online tonight, then we're doing a special thing tonight that those of you that join and become a member tonight, first one who becomes a member via the email address that Matt has given us, you just need to write the word membership and then your name. We'll follow that up and process that with you. And you will get a sweatshirt courtesy of us here at Essex Bird Watching Society, which Steve is going to present to you there. So how's that? That's because it's our first night in our virtual talk. And don't forget, David's going to pick out some highlight questions that are going to get pin badges. And I think Matt said as well, kind of some of the first responses as well. We're going to give some of our big pin badges away. Right. Am I still sharing or not? I don't think I am. No. Okay. Next thing, just before we go to questions, and I'm hoping Matt and Steve are collating as I talk, is we're going to have another talk in December, which is going to be on the 18th of December. And Steve, Matt, and myself are going to head. We may have a few guests joining us, but we're going to do a review of the autumn months, November, December. A little bit of a preview what we might see and what's around over Christmas, but also we're going to review the year 2020. What a year to review, but I'm going to review it from the perspective of some of the great birds that have been around Essex and sightings during the year. So just that, put that on your calendar, be probably the same time, same place on the 18th of December. Great. So, Steve, Matt, over to you for questions.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've got a few. Have you got some, Steve?
I've got one. Yay.
Go on, you go first.
So, Mel from Epping is asking David, how many species in total have you recorded?
Well, I've no idea. It's probably about 55 species on Nutmeg, something like that. Normally increased by maybe most years it's getting slower. So I've probably maybe 55 or 60. I've got individual spreadsheets for each year, so I don't have a total. I've never considered working out how many there is in total. But yeah, I would imagine about 60 by now.
Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it? It's Is there anything that you would have you should have recorded that you haven't?
This year was my first grey plover, so I was like, I didn't know how I missed grey plover. What other things have I not recorded? Some people have had cuckoos at night, which I would really like. I haven't had that. And flycatchers, pied flycatcher, I'd like to record that. Because I get quite a lot. I've had spotted flycatcher now. Pied flycatcher at night would be like the pièce de résistance for me, really.
That was interesting there, David, that you mentioned cuckoo at night, because my wife and I were on Sonogram Island last year in April.
Yeah. And
we were out late at night, 11 o'clock at night. It's a famous place for Manx shearwaters and storm petrels, and they come in at night with incredible sound. That would be an amazing recording. That would certainly get the sonogram going.
Yeah.
But in the middle of all of that, we heard a cuckoo, and it was like, that was a cuckoo. No, was it a Manx shear? No, it was a cuckoo. And then we reported it the next day to the rangers there, and there was kind of a raised eyebrow. But lo and behold, the next morning, the first cuckoo was found on Skoma, the island just a mile or so further north. And so very likely that cuckoo was passing over Skocum and over land calling, which I never realized they did.
Yeah, no, there's been a few records of them across the UK migrating at night. The only trouble you do have in the spring is that because you're in the area of birds naturally singing, I've discovered that my local blackcap often sings in the middle of the night. So like 1 o'clock in the morning, suddenly does a little bit of a burst of song. So I normally only don't count some of these songbirds migrating as over my garden rather than just waking up in the middle of the night and doing something crazy, unless I get like a distant song and then a really loud song. And then I think, well, that's definitely moving. So sometimes I'll record this stuff like magpies flying around at night as well, which is a bit odd because they're kind of species that we're not really associating with nocturnal migration. Now, whether or not these are just local birds waking up in the middle of the night and flying around or more long distance stuff, it's very hard to know. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that we get more of these oddities start picking up, migrating over at night as more people do this sort of stuff.
So that's it for me. So over to you then, Matt.
Okay, right. So first in, I've got Michael on the emails who's asked, can you recommend a dish for recording and capturing sound on a microphone for NOCMIG? So can you recommend a dish for recording and capturing sound on a microphone for NOCMIG?
Well, I mean, I use a microphone called Talinga, and that's is it Swedish? Yeah, I think it's a Swedish company. And they produce them and then they'll send them out to you and you can just connect them up to quite a few different sorts of digital recorders. But they are a bit pricey, really. That's the only one. See, the trouble is that I started off with, I've only used like 2 different mics ever. So I had a Sennheiser mic that I used to use for doing daytime sound recordings. And then when I read the sound approach book and they were saying they use these Talinga mics, the parabolic dish, I was like, well, I've got to get one. So I saved up, got one, and that was it. So I don't have a lot of exposure of using different ones. And because it's such a great quality one, you know, I've got 2 now, unfortunately. So, but yeah, that's the one that I would recommend because it's the only one that I've actually used. And
does that come with the dish, or can you buy the dishes separately to link?
You can buy. They do a whole variation of stuff you can do. So you can actually buy the dish on its own and with a mount for the mic, and you can put your own mic inside of it. But they also do one with their own specifically designed mic, and that's what I've gone down. Just because I don't really know enough about mics to start fiddling about with that sort of thing.
Okay. I've got Tony on the text has asked, what effect does weather have on NOCMIG? So I assume he means, do the birds stop moving if the weather's bad?
Yeah, so it depends on quite a few variables. But what I do notice is in the autumn, if you get like 3 or 4 days of a lot of rain in the day and night, then as soon as it starts, and you get a clear night, NOCMIG really just kind of like shoots up. Not always the first day, maybe the second day, but you get a really nice peak. And obviously that's migrants not being able to move. And then when it's clear, they're like, quick, leg it. And they just pile through the country, that sort of thing. So that's what I do look forward to. But sometimes also in the night, you get like a bit of rain, then you get a clear patch and the birds seem to move through during those clear patches as well. So it's not always really that clear when you get it, because often in the spring it can be like really mild weather and then you suddenly just get a big whoosh where obviously for some reason they go, right, today's the day, we're off, you know. And I notice that with ducks tend to be quite a narrow area, where in the autumn much more spread out.
Okay, so moving on to ducks, actually funny you should mention that. So I've got Chris on the email has said he's fascinated by the ducks on the coast. They can be seen moving during the daytime. Given how obvious they are, is it fair to say they only migrate overland at night time? I guess you don't really see lots of ducks moving overland at night.
Well, I have seen them do it occasionally. So I've seen ducks fly into sites coming in quite large numbers. I remember being at Walthamstow wetlands and had about 300 or 400 shoveler coming in, and they looked like they'd just come in from somewhere else and just piled into the reservoir just there and then. So I suspect they do. It may not be as obvious because, you know, a lot of these birds that migrate at night are doing it for protection. It's easier for predators to pick them off during the day than it is at night. So they may well focus it much more during the day. But if you time your migration wrong, like I've seen on the coast, and birds come in during the day, you just got to go with how the cars roll, really.
Okay. Got some questions on the YouTube chat as well. Jenny, she's asking, she's asked, is there any way to filter out noise like airplanes? I think you've already mentioned there is filter software available.
Yeah, it also depends on how loud, because the louder it is, the more space it takes up in the sound file, and therefore there's less you can really work with. I don't get a huge amount of airplane issues. Just occasionally I get like a low flying aircraft, especially in the springtime when it's the nights are a bit longer.
Okay. She's also asked, has any recording been done from Tower 42?
No. Tower 42 is a site that David Lindo used to get people to go up and try and do diurnal migration. Now, the only trouble with that was they were always limited as to when they can do it. And if you want to do diurnal migration, you really want to be up there from first light for as long as possible and continuously, so you get a really nice data set. Turning up on random days isn't always that conductive for doing a good set of collecting good sets of data. Now, I did try to talk to David Lindo about having a mic up there and what they've done in the States, because I heard about this back in the 90s when I read about people in America putting old tape machines on top of skyscrapers and recording the birds migrating over. And they were picking up new birds for states and stuff like that really quickly because there was a lot of birds traveling through. And they were getting the companies to turn off the aircon because the aircon makes a whole load of noise. Okay. And there's no point recording right next to like an aircon unit because it's just going to be too hard to sort out. So I was trying to find out whether it was possible to turn off the aircon or have it on a section of the roof where there's low sound. Then you could do a really nice recording. My idea when I read about the article was to put mics on top of Tape Modern because there's nothing on top of there. But I had no sound gear and I had no idea who to contact about it. Maybe I should approach them again about it because you can actually get automated stuff that will record on specific times, which would be useful. Saves me having to go all the way up to the top of a tower because otherwise I'm putting out my gear day in, day out.
Okay. We've also got... on the YouTube live chat, Jenny has said, do you think having more receivers in a wide area might help with gauging the size of a flock or its size? A bit like a radio telescope array. So obviously,
yeah, I think that will give you a better idea on the direction, but it's really assessing all that information, running it through some computer to go, oh, they're all going this way, they're going that way. That'll give you an idea of direction. In terms of flocks, you really need some sort of visual thing to do that. So a friend of mine uses infrared binoculars, and he does a lot of counts of birds going over his garden. And he says there's a lot of stuff going over that doesn't call at all. So we're potentially really only hitting the tip of the iceberg here. But of course, infrared binoculars will not enable you to really identify stuff down to individual species and so forth.
Okay. We've got Simon on the YouTube feed. He's asked, can you record bird sounds beyond the normal range of human hearing and display them on a sonogram so that you can see them?
Well, with some bird sounds, it does go really high, but it often starts off in the normal human range anyhow. So you will hear it no matter what. So a friend of mine who's a bat specialist, Neil Middleton, he produced a book where he's looking at high frequency ranges of sounds that are beyond our ears, but of species that actually emanate into this. So some species of birds will actually produce sounds that go all the way up, but that you get them at the bottom anyhow, so you're able to hear them. As far as I know, I haven't heard of any going right at the top ranges only. Okay.
We've got Andrew on the emails. He said, what resources do you use or recommend for validating sounds that you don't recognise?
Phone a friend. Phone a friend. So there's this WhatsApp group and I put stuff around there and ask them. You can also on Xenocanto website, which is XENO and then CANTZO, I think it is. There you can actually post mystery sounds and people will listen to it and try and tell you what it is. Now, it's very likely you will record quite a few things that no one has any idea what they are. And I've sent stuff off to the sound approach team and sometimes they come back to me and go, we don't know what it is, but when you find out, can you let us know? So there are mystery sounds that you will pick up. Now, when I'm out in the field, I often hear birds and I go, what is that? And then I pick up a visual and ID it. Yeah. So, and sometimes you'll hear a bird, like say a whimbrel, give a really odd call. You think, is that a whimbrel? And then you see a whimbrel and then you kind of almost forget that it made this odd sound. So we then got to go to night and go, you've got no idea what it is. Someone's going to make some funny sound and we've got to try and work out what it is. So the only way around that is often to record a lot during the day, build up a nice data collection of all these odd sounds of birds you can actually see making the sound so you know where it's coming from. And then hopefully that will help you later on. But I get about 10% of my bird sounds I can't identify.
Okay. I guess also when it's during the day, you're in the habitat as well, so you've got a rough idea of what you might be hearing. Yeah. Right, Anne on the emails has asked, have you heard any owls?
Yeah, so I don't actually have tawny owls breeding in my area, but a few times I've had like birds turn up in the autumn and just start making occasional calls. And I'm in a real residential area, so it's all houses. And I have recorded barn owls well twice now flying over. So they obviously are in the area, cutting across these urban places, still feeding and occasionally make a sound. I mean, how many times a barn owl flies over my house and doesn't call? I don't know. It could be a lot.
Yeah,
and I've only just recorded it twice.
Okay. I've got a question from Moira on the YouTube live chat. What inspired you to do Knockmig?
Just being obsessed about birds, really. It was the tale about being in America, and I was always really keen. And then I heard about people doing it in the UK, and I put it out. And then it was like just playing with it. And the more I done it, the more addicted I became to it, more interested I was in like what sounds are going on out there, actually recording it in detail. So then people can look at the data and go, wow, you can really see these migration of like the large gulls. The large gulls was one of these things that people just didn't really occur to me, that I'm going to get loads of gulls flying over. And like August, I can get like 300 or 400 in one night calls.
Okay. And I've got a question for you. I've been learning or trying to learn bird songs and calls for the last 18 months to 2 years. So I'm still sort of starting out on it. How much has Knockmig helped you, or did you already have an excellent knowledge initially?
Back in the day when I was a kid, I used to birdwatch with my dad, and he was always the ears and I was always the eyes. And I remembered all the visual. And I remember at 16, I started branching out on my own, and I was like, I have no idea almost what I'm listening to. I knew a handful of species. So it is really hard work to get there. And then I started doing lectures, and I didn't like the recordings from CDs. So I then started collecting my own because I wanted a real sound recording with, a train in the background or someone walking as a blackbird singing. So it just felt really like in the field. And that's really how it started. And to be honest, I learn all the time. Most days in the field, I hear an odd call and I'm like, well, I've never heard a great tit do that or a blue tit do that. What's going on here? So I'm constantly learning. And, it has taken a while to really get there. And with Knockmig, it's really like taking all your knowledge, throwing it out the window and starting again. It's a real beginning kind of like learning curve. No matter how experienced you are, there's always something that's going to catch you out. Okay.
Oh, might just had a text as well. Hold on.
Yeah.
I think I'm done. Apart from possibly a text.
I've just got one. Then this is from Yes Milady in Colchester. They ask, what height are the migrating birds flying at?
Well, that's interesting because sometimes birds are flying really low. So this spring, I actually had a spotted crake fly over my garden and give one single like whip call like that. And it was right at the end of the night. So I think it was quite disorientated trying to find somewhere. And I nearly fell off my chair when I heard that. I was like, this is a spotted crake. That was absolutely amazing. So some of the stuff is really low down and I can hear the wing beats. That's got to be quite close. But they done a study, I think, in Northern Europe of redback shrikes and great reed warblers, and they were flying at several kilometers up. So if they're flying at several kilometers up calling, I'm not going to pick them up. So I'm only really picking up the low migration stuff as well.
Okay. And I've got one from Richard on the text. Does David stop processing the Knockmig file once the dawn chorus has started?
There's a guidelines on how to do this Knockmig. So you start at the end of civil twilight, and there's websites you can look that up, and then again you stop when civil twilight begins again. I tend to check afterwards in case there's anything interesting. Now in the spring, it's a lot of birds singing, so that gets a bit hard to go through. But in the autumn, you can pick up other good stuff. So one autumn, I was sitting in bed and I was reading amazingly rather than doing something else, and probably a bird book. And when I went through my sound files, I then discovered a kingfisher flew over my garden whilst I was sitting in bed. Then an hour later, a woodlark flew over. And I was like, oh no, I've missed two really good garden birds going over my garden because I was just sat in bed. But I mean, if I had put away the gear, I would have missed them completely. So you do pick up some good stuff later on.
Cool. And I think I'm done.
I guess the question that David is, if you're recording actually hears them, but you don't because you're fast asleep, do you kind of put them on your garden list or not?
Well, my garden list is birds I've recorded, not necessarily what I've seen. So like if I'm in the garden and I hear a bird go over, I'm not going to look for it. And when I was doing it live, I could hear coots going over and I could still hear them. So I'm only really recording, I'm only noting what I've recorded rather than going into the minute detail of was I actually there present at the same time. The same if I had a camera trap in the garden and I picked up something good, I'd probably still stick that on the list of species that I've recorded. It's not necessarily that I've actually seen them or heard them in real life.
It would still go on my records. I can guarantee that, mate.
Well, it's individual basis, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If you want to do that, do it. It's fine, you know.
Your list, yeah. It's your list. It's your record.
Sorry, I've got one more anonymous text come through. It says, "Is this a growing method of collecting records?"
Yeah, it's becoming very, very popular in the UK, and it's already popular in America. But in the UK and Western Europe, people are really getting into it. And I found someone in Hong Kong doing it as well. So it's like it really is taken off quite well. And it'd be fascinating 10 years time to see all this data set and what it actually demonstrates really.
10, 20 years ago, this kind of kit would have been outside of most people's, means really. It would have been university or something like that would have the facilities and the funds to actually kind of, run such a project. But now, I've seen online people making their own kit just with mobile phones and all kinds of things and getting some results. So you can even
record it directly onto your computer as well. So you don't even need a digital recorder. As long as you've got space on your hard drive, just record it straight onto your computer and then check it later on.
Great stuff.
Is there any software that can actually do the identification for you? So would it be possible to have automated sites set up that will actually identify and log the birds as well?
Not currently. So at the moment, you can buy software that will pick out all your sounds and lump them all together, and you can go through them and listen to them. Now, the Americans, Cornell University, they developed the Merlin app, which is great for photographs and can identify a lot of stuff. They've also got BirdNet, which is where you can actually upload sound files and it will give you a percentage idea of what it is. It's very good for American stuff, but in the UK, it's not quite so good. So I'd imagine maybe in 10 years' time, they'll have perfected that, maybe even sooner, and we get really good ability to identify birds by sound.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm sure you've enjoyed it out there watching, and those of you also that will kind of watch it on catch up. So if you have enjoyed it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and click the bell on YouTube, and we're putting new videos up. And as we've said before for David, don't forget about his book if you want that. So I'm sure you can pick it up online. Bird watching in London, all the best places to see birds in the capital. How else can people keep in touch with you, follow you, David?
You can follow me on Twitter, which is Birdbrain UK, and also through my website, which is www.birdbrainuk.com. You can message me through that as well. So get in contact if you want any more information.
That's great. And Steve, you're on Twitter. And Matt, how can we follow you?
So yeah, I'm at Swallow Birding on Twitter.
And I'm Eat, Sleep, Bird, Repeat on Twitter.
I thought you'd gone to sleep at that point.
Sorry,
Matt. I'm Linford with an N for November, Linford Birder on Twitter. And always let us know that you've watched tonight, enjoyed it. And if we can be of any help, then we will certainly seek to be so for you. So thanks for joining. Want to thank David again for such incredible,
fantastic.
No problem.
Thoughts. Been absolutely brilliant, giving us lots to kind of think and process on, and then also to Steve and Matt for helping me with the questions and collating everything. It's been good to be together again.
Pleasure.
And we'll be together on December the 18th. Thanks to those that have supported us from the Birdwatching Society and the executive tonight. Just like to give a shout out to Sue, who actually organises our meetings and put all this together in terms of booking things. And you'd have normally seen her face, and Jerry, our chairman, if this was a physical meeting, and in the future you might see them on here. Let's see how it goes. I was thinking, kind of, David, in the lockdown situation, such a great opportunity of something to focus on and do from your garden. And so kind of, you know, that might tempt people out to put something on the Christmas list that's going to help them, you know, kind of with nutmeg in the future.
Yeah.
And on that theme, talking about December the 18th, I'm hoping we're going to have a focus on garden watching, garden bird watching during the lockdown. Hoping I can pull a special guest on to talk about that, who did incredibly well in Essex during that time. So don't miss that. So I think we'll kind of wind up there. I'd just like to say to my mum and dad, you didn't really need to ring to get a badge. I could have got you one for Christmas. But thanks anyway. Thanks for leaving a comment. And to Essex Wildlife Trust, don't forget, I'm expecting the check in the post. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching. See you again on the 18th.
Hey,
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best, guys.